What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Most controversial running backs for 2020. Pretty excited to make this video and excited to see the comment section, how much I get yelled at. But I think this is a really cool one. Basically, I've taken a bunch of industry rankings that have been updated recently and looking only at running backs that are actually being drafted, picked like 7 or 8 that have the highest standard deviation among experts. So for example, Christian McCaffrey has the lowest standard deviation of 0.2 because almost everyone has him as a 101, and whoever doesn't has him as like the second pick. But there are players that not everyone agrees on. So let's say someone has a running back ranked as a running back 10, and other people have him as a running back 50. Well, that's a massive standard deviation, and he'll be on the list for us to discuss. As simple as that. But I think it's a really good way of looking at who do people not agree at. Before we start, you guys can always see my rankings exactly on our website, and remember that the May giveaway ends when May ends. So if you want your best chance of winning something, sign up for All In before May 31st is over. So let's start off with actually a backfield, the only backfield on the list, I believe, and that's the Ravens running back. So Mark Ingram is ranked anywhere between the running back 17 and 49, coming in as a running back 24 on average, and right now he's my running back 23. So I agree with this ranking. It's basically as even as it could get, but I don't have him as a target. I talked about why I was too low on him last year in a video earlier this week, so I understand the efficiency and the higher touchdown projection. I understand. When he gets the ball, he's going to be efficient, and he should score a decent amount of touchdowns. But he's 31 now, and J.K. Dobbins is a much bigger threat to the early down work than Justice Hill and Gus Edwards ever were. So if you combine that with the knowledge that there's really no path to him getting more receptions than last season, like that's just not going to happen, then it's pretty clear he's going to be a boom-bust player this season, which can definitely still be valuable, but I'd prefer a little bit more stability in that like late 4th to early 5th round range, which is kind of where he's going. And that's also the range I tend to look more at wide receivers, because you guys know I really like going running back heavy early, and then once we hit that like 4th, 5th, 6th round, that's when I start loading up on wide receivers. So if you go wide receiver heavy early, you just see insane value there, and you need to take these high upside running backs in the middle rounds, well, maybe you do go after Mark Ingram. But with how I draft, I don't expect to have much of him, even though I agree with the average ranking. But staying with that backfield, we have J.K. Dobbins ranked anywhere from the running back 16 to 63, so a huge variation there. And on average, is coming in as running back 36. For me, he's running back 29. So I do have him 7 spots above consensus, although I only think I've taken him in maybe 1 to 2 mock drafts this season, and I've done close to 15 of them, so that should give you a good idea of how often I would draft him. The case for and against him is honestly very simple. Case for him, he's going to be a running back 1 if Ingram ever got hurt, but it's unlikely that you could start him without that happening. So at least not for the first half of the season. Maybe that could change later in the season, but for the first half, if Mark Ingram's healthy, he's going to have to be on your bench. But hey, if you're in this range and you're cool with the running backs, like you picked maybe 3 running backs you feel very confident in and you want someone with that sort of upside, go for it, because he does have that sort of upside and not everyone has that in this range. But for me, typically, I don't do that. Typically, this is also still the range that I've been taking wide receivers, although I'll say taking him 1 to 2, which is more than I've taken Ingram in. So he does have that sort of upside I am looking for in that range if I was looking at running back. Another upside running back that people don't agree on is Derrius Guice, ranked anywhere between the running back 26 and 58. Running back 34 on average. He's my running back 33, so I have him basically with the field. At this point, we all know who he is as well. Elite running back talent who has just not shown an ability to stay healthy. If you promised me 16 healthy weeks from Derrius Guice, he's probably a late first round pick. The problem is no one can promise you that. He's in the highest risk tier for injuries. He's on one of the worst offenses in football, and that's very bad for running backs. So it's pretty easy to see why I only have 4 running backs in the top 70 with a higher risk grade than Guice. Fortunately, though, he's still draftable, even with that stuff, because he goes in the 6th or 7th round. That's where we're starting to ignore risk. We're starting to just take upside. And like I said, you give me 16 weeks out of Derrius Guice, he's probably a running back 1. That's what I want to target in this range. And he doesn't need, like Dobbins does, an injury. So Dobbins needs Mark Ingram to get hurt or to somehow just pass him on the depth chart and they don't use Ingram, which is pretty unrealistic. Guice just needs himself to not get hurt. And that's a more clear path to his upside. So I do tend to target Guice more than Dobbins, even having him ranked a little bit lower. Maybe I do need to adjust that ranking, but the risk is obviously much greater with Guice. Raheem Mostert is next. He ranks anywhere from the running back 15 to 34, coming in as a running back 26 on average, but I have him as the running back 31, so I'm definitely below consensus. My issue is that Mostert is 28, and he only has 178 career carries. Think about that. He's 28 years old, and he has 178 career carries. You don't typically see running backs break out at age 28, especially when they're undrafted, and they only had 111 touches in their biggest season in college. Like, this isn't some 24-year-old former third-round pick from LSU. He could definitely have a good season, but we've seen, 7 good games from him in his career, and he's definitely not a pass catcher. So I think people are overvaluing how good he was down the stretch and then that massive playoff game, thinking that that's what they're going to see the entire season. But he is far from a sure thing, and I just don't like spending that 6th to 7th round pick on him. And quite frankly, he's probably going to be closer to the 6th round end of that range. I just don't like that pick, and that's why I have him ranked a little bit lower than consensus. Fournette is next. You guys know where I always have Fournette with consensus. But he's ranked anywhere from the running back 8 to the running back 29, coming in as running back 16 on average. I have him at 19. Shouldn't surprise anyone. I always have him lower than consensus. He is one of the riskiest running backs overall, although he's not as risky as some of the guys we have talked about, but he's the riskiest among the top 20. He's obviously got really high injury risk. He's got more volume risk than I think people realize, because we always think, well, it's only the injury risk because we know he's going to get a ton of work and good work in the receiving game. But they added Chris Thompson. And so if Thompson stays healthy, he's taking a ton of targets from Fournette, and they don't have this exceptional offense or anything. So it's not like the touchdowns are all definitely going to be there. So he takes a hit there as well. And they've been looking to trade him. So there's no way we can say his volume is as secure as it has been in the past. So when you add that to his risk with injuries, because everyone knows he's got a risk there, he's super risky. And going inside the top 20, that's not someone I want to target. So I don't see myself having any of him this season. Jonathan Taylor is up next, ranked anywhere from the running back 11 to 30, averaging running back 19. I have him as a running back 13. So I am on the very high end of this debate. And the reason is mostly upside. We know this is one of the best offensive lines in the league, and we know for a fact that Taylor is an incredible running back. Remember, sometimes we don't need to see rookie running backs perform in the NFL. We know they're elite. If, and it's a big if, he were to get the full workload, he'd be a top 5 running back. Top 5, not a running back 1, a top 5 running back. So that is in his range of outcomes. Now, people have him lower because, well, he's not. He's just not going to get the full workload. They have Mack and they have Hines. But Hines and Wilkins had 170 touches last season, and Mack had 261. So that's 431 running back touches split amongst Taylor, Mack, and Hines, assuming they have roughly the same amount this season, which there's no reason to think they won't. There's every reason to believe they want to run the football, and that Phillip Rivers loves dumping it. So if anything, that number could go up. And that number leaves plenty of room for a 200 touch season from Taylor and still give Mac, close to 200 touches himself, and then to give Hines a decent workload in the receiving game because Hines is going to get like 0 carries. So his upside is massive, but at worst, he's an elite running back, running behind an elite offensive line, getting a decent amount of workload. 200 touches is not a small amount, and plenty of scoring chances. So the risk isn't all that high, and the upside is. So that's why I really like targeting Taylor where he's going. Next running back is Todd Gurley, ranked anywhere between the running back 8 and 35 with an average of running back 15. He's my running back 17. So not too different from the average, but a little bit lower. This one's really just the risk, although it's worth noting, I have him as the 24th riskiest running back, which isn't too bad. And he's going in that range where the risk starts to explode. I'm not going to say that everyone around him is super risky, but he's going in that range, running back 15 to 17, where people are starting to get a little bit more risky. We're in that running back 2 range. Things are a little bit less sure. So I do feel like he's a decent pick. I mean, yes, he could get hurt or he could start to break down, but he's also never been below 250 touches in a season. So while we do seem to assign a lot of risk to him with these touches, right, because of his knee, remember, he has never been below 250 touches, and he scored 70 touchdowns in the last 5 years. Plus, he's on a 1-year deal, so there's no real incentive for the Falcons to limit his touches, right? Especially after we just saw them just run Freeman into the ground last year. So I actually think his ranking is fair, and if you end up with him, I'm okay with that. Not someone I'm going out of my way to target, but if you're sitting there in the draft and he's the best running back on the board and you really need a running back, don't feel bad about targeting him. I think he's a decent pick. The biggest variance of any running back 1 is our last player in Aaron Jones. He's anywhere from the running back 6 to 20, ranking as the running back 11 on average, and he's my running back 15. And I actually really like where I'm at with Jones. He's extremely likely to regress in the touchdown department on a per-touch basis, and they've been vocal about wanting to use a committee, so especially after drafting A.J. Dillon, you gotta expect the touchdowns to go down because there's no way they don't use Dillon in some goal line packages just specifically to get him the ball because he is massive, but also just total touches. Dillon's not going to come in there and get 0 touches. So if they split in a committee, not only is Aaron Jones going to regress on a per-touch basis for touchdowns, but those touches are also going to regress. That's less yards, less receptions, and ultimately less touchdowns as well. So we're going to see a noticeable drop in that volume. Still a good player to have, still going to have some really good weeks as still the lead back on a good offense, but I don't want him as my running back 1, especially when you consider he's my 45th safest running back in the model, which leaves him as the 2nd riskiest running back in the top 20, right ahead of Fournette. So those are the most controversial running backs as of mid to late May, we'll say. If you guys like this, then let me know. I can do this for the other positions as well, and I'll make updates to this as rankings change. But that, my friends, is the end of this video. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.